Hello and welcome back to Buckeye Classics Countdown of the very best of Ohio State's football history, the Buckeyes' 50 greatest. But before we get going, let's take a quick look at what we've seen so far. Are you ready for more? Well, then let's start off with a game that will never be forgotten, although a few of us who played in it have tried many times.
Ohio State's 1974 battle against Michigan State culminated in a chaotic last-second climax. But when the dust finally settled, no one knew which team had won. It was a question that would linger for the next 45 minutes.
I'd never seen anything like it, and I don't think anybody ever had, where you have to wait for 45 minutes to find out who won a ball game.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen, but we know it's not good.
All of a sudden, the door opens up, and it's Wayne Duke, Big Ten commissioner.
And we were told that Michigan State won the football game, and it was upsetting, and our guys were upset.
It was the kind of news Woody Hayes did not like to hear.
All I heard was this big crash into the locker, and I heard, what are you going to do about this, Wayne Duke? What are you going to do about this?
And Woody had the commissioner of the Big Ten, Wayne Duke, had him by his lapels, had his feet off the ground and banging him against the locker saying, what do you mean?
I know that Woody was pretty adamant. He thought that we at least should have had the opportunity to run one more play.
So then Woody came into our locker room and tried to get a group of players together to go over into the Michigan State locker room to beat them up.
Can you imagine Ohio State going over and fighting Michigan State in their locker room?
Cooler heads prevailed, but for the Buckeyes, the sting of defeat and the loss of their #1 ranking left a bitter taste that remains today.
We put ourselves in our own situation that we should have, never gotten ourselves into.
Every time I think about it, it makes me sick. We were #1 in the country that year. So, yeah, that was a bitter pill to swallow.
In the mid-1950s, the Ohio State-Iowa game was the biggest show in town.
I think in 1954, it became more Ohio State than Michigan during a 4 or 5 year period.
From 1954 through 1958, either Ohio State or Iowa went to the Rose Bowl. Ohio State could not go in 55 because of the no-repeat rule in effect at that time.
The most famous of these battles took place in the Horseshoe in 1957.
To me, that was better than the Rose Bowl. We had Vice President Nixon in the dressing room and a lot of hype on that game.
It was such that the demand for tickets was one of the greatest ever for any game played at Ohio Stadium during the 1950s.
Both the Hawkeyes and the Buckeyes entered the game ranked in the top 5, and both Big Ten and national title implications were at stake. The game lived up to all the hype, and with just 7 minutes remaining, the Hawkeyes held a tenuous 3-point lead. Starting from their own 32-yard line, the Buckeyes turned things over to their bruising fullback, Bob White.
It was a Herculean effort by everybody, but primarily Bob White.
White gained 66 of the needed 68 yards. He scored the touchdown, one of the biggest touchdowns that Ohio State's ever had, and the Buckeyes went on to win that game 17-13.
He just said, I'm going to do it, and he did it.
White's heroics helped lift the Buckeyes to the Big Ten title and more. A 10-7 Rose Bowl victory over Oregon gave Ohio State a 9-1 record, good enough for the school's 3rd national championship. The 1961 Buckeyes had everything it took to be one of Ohio State's greatest teams ever. An unbeaten season, the Big Ten title, a 50-20 blowout over Michigan, and the nation's #1 ranking. But when the university's faculty council voted to decline the team's Rose Bowl bid, a controversy erupted that sent shockwaves across the Ohio State campus.
Because we had 5,000 students that marched on the Capitol and marched right down High Street. It was close to becoming very violent.
It was going crazy, and then they marched all the way down, tearing windows out and everything.
The vote was not a vote, really, whether to go to Rose Bowl. It was a vote on who would control athletics.
the academic people at Ohio State may have pulled away from the athletic program a little bit and wanted to have the athletics department play a little bit lesser significant role.
Also in play was the growing rancor between Coach Woody Hayes and alumni secretary Jack Fullen.
There are always some people in the campus that are resentful of football. There was some of that toward football and toward Woody.
It was just his feeling that the tail was wagging the dog, and it was getting out of hand.
Lost in the hurly-burly of politics and protest were the men who played the game and the dreams they had of playing for it all.
To have that thing happen to you like it did, it obviously hurt Ohio State football.
For all of those followers of Ohio State University, it was a huge disappointment for everyone connected with the program.
With a 10-0 record, the 1979 Buckeyes entered their season finale against Michigan, having already exceeded preseason expectations.
I don't think any of the polls had us anywhere close to being number one in the nation, or even the Big Ten for that matter.
I thought, oh, goodness gracious, what kind of season are we going to have here?
But with a trip to the Rose Bowl and a shot at the national title hanging in the balance, the Buckeyes found themselves staring at a 3-point deficit as they headed into the fourth quarter.
I kept saying that whole game, man, we're better than this team, but we were losing. And I said, something's going to happen. I didn't know what. I said, something's going to happen.
As Michigan came out to punt the ball, Ohio State lined up, and it was obvious that they were going to rush the punter.
10 red, that's what we called it. We had 10 red. That means that we got 10 men up there going after the punt.
And nobody picked up Jim Laughlin. Todd Bell, number 25, scooped that ball up at the 18-yard line and ran it in for one of the biggest touchdowns any Ohio State players ever scored.
I didn't see the block. I just heard the boom, and I was there, and I just picked it up and just darted for the end zone.
That was just huge, and that changed the whole momentum of the game and flip-flopped the pressure on Michigan.
They always got the breaks. We finally got a break.
And that gave us the outright Big Ten title, an undefeated season. Of course, that put us in the Rose Bowl in Earl Bruce's very first season. And what a way to win it right at the end on a block punt.
From 1968 through 1970, there was one name Big Ten offenses did not want to hear: Jack Tatum.
When he hit you, he ran through you. He ran over you. It was like a Mack truck hitting you.
Jack Tatum was the greatest hitter ever to play in Ohio Stadium.
If you're looking at him across the line and he had that scowl on you, thought, I think I'm going to run the other way.
In just his third game as a Buckeye, Tatum locked down Purdue's Heisman hopeful Leroy Keys to help spur one of Ohio State's greatest wins ever.
Anybody that was at Ohio Stadium that day, they saw Jack Tatum cover him one-on-one, and it was remarkable.
He was just fearless. He had no fear of anybody.
Opposing teams, however, were frightened of him. And more often than not, offenses tried their luck on the other side of the field.
They would try me one or two plays, and if I made a big hit, then they would go the other way.
You take Southern Cal. They did not run O.J. Simpson against Tatum. They ran away from Tatum all day. He couldn't make a living running at Jack Tatum, and we don't think anybody else can.
Tatum was twice named All-American and was tabbed as 1970's National Defensive Player of the Year. His hard-hitting ways only continued in the pros.
He got a lot of bad press when he got to the pros because the way he did hit, he was vicious.
I've never known Jack Tatum to take a cheap shot. Jack just hit hard.
Jack's a sweetheart of a guy. But I don't think he wanted that to be known, and of course he didn't play like a sweetheart.
When Coach Earl Bruce was fired just 5 days before the Michigan game, the stage was set for one of Ohio State's most emotional and controversial games ever.
Well, the build-up to most Ohio State-Michigan games is all week long, and it obviously focuses on the game. The 1987 Michigan week was anything but that.
So it wasn't the classic Ohio State-Michigan battle for something on the line. We were playing for Coach Bruce, make no mistake about it.
Their devotion to their leader didn't stop Michigan from taking the early lead, but the Buckeyes responded with a barrage of their own.
Michigan jumped off to a 13-0 lead, but our kids didn't quit, and they came back and went ahead 20-13.
You got to be really proud of kids that get down at Michigan, and with the coach being fired that fought back. Unbelievable that they could do that.
Michigan came back to tie the game at 20. But a late field goal gave the Buckeyes the upset victory and Coach Bruce a measure of vindication.
Watching the team carry Earl off Michigan field victorious was special and something that I'll always remember.
There's no sweeter victory in the world than one over Michigan in your last game at Ohio State. The real thrill of that football game was for our football team to win after the week we've had.
I don't think you could have scripted a better ending to the way that we would send him off down the road and go our separate ways.
Quick as a cat and wily as a snake, Rex Kern was the ultimate Buckeye field general.
I don't think there was anybody who ever had more confidence in himself than what Rex Kern did.
Somebody has to be the general, okay? And the general on the field was Rex.
Under Kern's command, the Buckeyes claimed 3 of their greatest seasons ever, including 1968's stunning national title.
Rex Kern is a great football player and the key to that team.
He was not a pro-style quarterback that's going to go back in the pocket and pass every down, but he was a field general and a winner.
We wanted to win every goddamn game we played in, and we wanted to win it by 21 points or more.
With a 27-2 record, Kern stands as the Buckeyes' winningest quarterback ever and one of Ohio State's most popular stars.
When you look at his teammates, they all revere him. They think he was the best thing that ever happened to them in their lives, both on and off the field.
He was a great leader, a people person. He knew how to treat people. He got along with everybody. I don't think there was a guy on the team that didn't like Rex.
He was kind of a prankster and had a little bit of an orneriness about him.
Rex was a great leader, but he was a great Christian young man, a competitor, a gentleman, a hell of a scholar.
The guy was just Jack Armstrong, the All-American boy.
It's a wonderful experience that I'd never trade.
In 1935, Ohio State and Notre Dame met in Columbus for a game that now stands etched in the fabric of college football lore.
Notre Dame miraculously was able to come from behind and win that game 18-13 in a game that has been known by a lot of people to be the game of the century.
When the Buckeyes lost again to the Irish the following year, Ohio State fans were forced to endure a 60-year wait for a chance at revenge.
What a game!
In 1995, that opportunity finally came, and the Buckeye Nation could hardly contain their pent-up emotions.
The build-up to the Ohio State-Notre Dame game in Columbus in 1995 was just about as big as any home game Ohio State has ever had.
All the old-timers kept talking about Notre Dame, getting another shot at them.
With the media and the fans, boy, what a huge game that was.
By the middle of the third quarter, however, the Irish seemed poised to claim another Columbus triumph. But a 5-minute barrage of 21 unanswered points left the Golden Domers reeling in scarlet and gray dust.
The momentum finally shifted back to where it should be, and every play seemed like it was a highlight play.
By the end of the afternoon, Ohio State had put 45 points on the board, and Buckeyes worldwide finally claimed their long-awaited satisfaction.
I had never heard the stadium as loud as they were that day.
You didn't really understand it till after the game when you saw still 1 million people on campus.
Not only was it a big win for Ohio State as a program, it was a big win for John Cooper to be able to say, whew, finally, we did it, we can move on.
5-26.
Ohio State versus Michigan. It's the greatest rivalry in college football. But in the 100-plus years since the schools started playing, a certain 10-year stretch stands out above the rest.
During the years that Bo Schembechler was up in Michigan and Woody was here, there was an intensity level there, the likes of which will never be reached again.
They loved each other, they hated each other, and it was a 10-year war.
Bo had played for Woody. It had been a long-range plan that Bo was going to coach for Woody, and that Bo was going to be a great coach.
But Woody never figured that Bo would coach at Michigan, or how quickly his one-time protege would make life more difficult.
In Bo's first year at Michigan, 1969, Michigan pulled off one of the greatest upsets of all time, defeating Woody Hayes' 1969 team 24-12, and that set the stage for the next 9 years.
Woody got his revenge the following year, and over the course of the decade, the annual battle between Woody and Bo became one of college football's most anticipated events.
That was the most awesome place to be because the electricity was unbelievable.
I was probably Woody's closest friend. But during the 10-year war that we competed, we never talked. I never called him on the phone. He never called me.
They were tremendously good friends off the field, but I think there's nothing either one of them wanted to do more than defeat the other one's team.
It'll always be an unbelievable big game, but I don't think it will ever be as big because of Bo and Woody.
Played in the grips of a brutal winter storm, the 1950 Ohio State-Michigan game was a bone-chilling chapter in college football's greatest rivalry.
Commonly known as the Snow Bowl, played at Ohio Stadium, likely was the most unusual college football game ever played.
In fact, the game was almost called, but when Michigan's coach threatened not to return the following week, the field was cleared for play, sort of.
Oh, brother, what a day.
It looked like ants in a meringue pie or something.
That would have had to have been fun to play in, and to this day, it's still historic.
The Buckeyes' only points came early in the first quarter when Vic Janowicz converted a Michigan fumble into 3 amazing points.
Vic Janowicz's 38-yard field goal was truly remarkable, especially when you consider the swirling wind and the very difficult angle.
But from that point on, the game turned into an exchange of punts and a battle of endurance.
At the Ohio State 49-yard line.
Michigan punted 24 times, Ohio State punted 21 times, the elements being just so bad that it was almost impossible to run a play from scrimmage.
2 punts in particular were the Buckeyes' undoing. At the close of the first half, the Wolverines blocked a Janowicz boot, which resulted in a safety. Another block ended in a touchdown, giving Michigan the game in the most unusual of ways.
Michigan never made a first down and beat us 9-3.
The 50,000 fans who braved the elements could at least take home a bittersweet memory, but the game cost Buckeye coach Wes Fessler his job.
It is my pleasure to announce the winner, Eddie George, Ohio State.
When Eddie George was awarded the 1995 Heisman Trophy, he forever sealed his name into Ohio State football's highest ring of honor. Not bad for a guy that just 3 years before appeared to have fumbled away his chance at stardom.
It had to hurt him because that was it for his season. I mean, it was over.
He had an incredible peak against Syracuse, and then a week later, an unbelievable valley.
I went from extreme high to the ultimate low. And I thought of transferring to another school and getting out of here.
Eddie just would be like, man, I can't believe I'm third string. He was like, man, I want to leave.
But instead of packing his bags, Eddie stayed put and poured everything he had into fulfilling his dreams.
That wasn't going to stop him. All that did was make him work that much harder.
Eddie would say, you know, I'm going to win the Heisman Trophy one of these days.
So I just put my nose to the ground and just started swinging, started digging in.
There's not enough time in the day to work any harder than Eddie George worked.
2 seasons later, Eddie was back on the field. The season after that, he made history.
I'm happy for him because he worked so hard. There was nothing given to Eddie.
A lot of people didn't believe that I could be in this position, but I think I made a statement by putting myself in that position to win that award and to get the trophy is icing on the cake.
Knowing his story and knowing him personally, it was beautiful to see.
Ohio State entered their 1968 Big Ten opener seeking vengeance for a humiliating defeat suffered just 1 year before.
Purdue led that game 35-0 at halftime, and the score could have been much worse.
But with 17 members of Ohio State's heralded 1967 recruiting class now on the field, the 68 game would be a different story.
From 20 to 20-yard line, we were running up and down the field, and we were just running right at them.
But inside the red zone, the Buckeyes came up empty, and the teams at the locker rooms nodded at 0.
Of the first half, Phipps going back to throw.
But when cornerback Ted Provost stepped in front of a Mike Phipps pass to start the second half, the Buckeyes broke the tie and grabbed control of the game.
When Teddy stepped in front of that ball, then we knew that we could command this field, that we could take over here.
2 series later, their command became complete when backup Billy Long came in for a hobbled Rex Kern and scrambled his way towards pay dirt.
He's at the 10, the 5, the 4, he scored!
A Mack truck could have driven through the hole that just opened up. And there was a path. And boy, I was running scared at that point.
When that middle opened up, he took off. There was never a moment of hesitation there.
Led by Jack Tatum, the Buckeye defense shut the Boilermakers out the rest of the way, and the afternoon ended in a shocking 13-zip triumph. The win pulled the Ohio State program out of a 7-year slump and propelled the 68 team to the national title.
That game gave us the edge, and then we believed that
We can win. Don't know how, but we're going to win.
Ohio State's shocking win over #1 Purdue propelled the Buckeyes to the 1968 national title. 34 years later, another group of unheralded upstarts shocked the world and claimed another national crown. But to see that and our final top 10, you'll have to come back next week. Until then, for Buckeye Classics, I'm Archie Griffin. See you next time.
To